Hello, welcome to Book Obsession. I'm Ashley Gunn. Today's book review is going to be on Hate to Love You by, I believe, Tijan. I could be butchering that, and I'm really sorry if I am. I picked this book actually because of the cover. I know that that's such a cliche, but I did because I've been reading really heavy books, and I told my husband, I said, the next cover I find with a heart on it, I'm going to be reading that book. Because I guess I just assumed that if it had a heart on it, it'd be a light, funny book. Anyways, that being beside the point, it ended up being really good. And at first I thought it was going to be a sports romance. And it does kind of go that way. It includes the football team quarterback along with a couple of other players. But it really doesn't have a lot to do with the sports itself. In general, you have a woman named Kennedy and a guy named Shay. Kennedy has come from a high school, and the situation there was just very difficult for her. Her brothers are both older than her, and people would get close to her trying to get to them. It really affected the way that Kennedy trusted people because you have so many people trying to be your friend because they want to sleep with your brother, and you have a lot of people being angry at you because they did sleep with your brother, and then unfortunately that all kind of bleeds into the very first relationship she was in, that she thought she was in love with this man, and she actually ended up choosing the guy over her brother, just to find out that it was all a revenge plot. And I wish that you would know a lot of that stuff at the beginning of the book, but you won't. And at times it'll seem like you don't really get why Kennedy behaves the way she does. As the book continues, you do figure that out a little bit more. I just personally think that at least you could have had a little better idea of her trust issues at the beginning, because it really doesn't make sense why she hates Shay so much. I actually started laughing quite a bit in the middle of the book because after Kennedy and Shay have gotten closer, Kennedy's even thinking about it, and she's like, I'm not really sure why I hated you so much. I don't know what my problem was. And so I appreciated the fact that even the character didn't completely understand her emotions at the beginning of their relationship, because that part of it was a little more difficult for me. Other than that, the only other issue I had with the book was the very, very end. And I want to tell you guys kind of the storyline before we get there. So, like I mentioned, Kennedy and Shay have this hate-love relationship, which is probably where the title came from, because at the beginning, they really don't like each other for an undisclosed reason. I'm not even sure Shay knows why they don't get along. That continues until they're grouped together for a class project. They start studying a little bit more. They have this spontaneous makeout session, and then eventually that leads to sex. After a very serious situation where Kennedy is beaten up, then Shay decides that they're dating. He basically tells everyone that she's his girlfriend, and she has the opportunity to say if she's not. So now they're dating. I appreciated the way they got together after they've been together for a little bit, because Kennedy starts having a real issue with the fact that she doesn't know a lot about Shay. And Shay's response was basically, yeah, look at how we started dating. We didn't actually date. We didn't get to know each other. We missed that whole part. So now we're going to have to do it again. One thing that I do want to mention that is in this novel is that a friend of Kennedy's is raped, and that kind of evolves into its own storyline where Kennedy and Casey, the woman who was raped, basically become friends, bonding over the fact that Kennedy was such a good friend to her as she went through that situation. And as I mentioned, that becomes kind of its own storyline because that leads to Kennedy getting beaten up later. Now, as I mentioned, I did have that one other issue, and we can talk about it now, which was that after Kennedy is beaten up, she gets out of the hospital, the end of the semester, they all go home. Then they come back to school. I wish the storyline would have gone a little bit more towards Kennedy readjusting to school, going to therapy, figuring out how to deal with it, and maybe her and Shay dealing with the situation. Now they're a couple and people talking and stuff like that, because clearly that was an issue of Kennedy's from high school. Go down that path, and it did in some ways. However, it also branches off so that Shay has a stalker that ends up trying to hurt Kennedy, and that is written really well. It's not a bad storyline, and I don't get to choose which way the author goes. So I'm not complaining about the way that it was written as much as I just wish it would have stayed on topic a little bit more, and for me the topic was Kennedy and her trust issues. Anyways, Shay ends up having a stalker, and that leads to Kennedy having to stand up for herself and get that fight back, that passion back that she kind of lost after she was attacked. The storyline as written was good. That was just my 2 cents about where I would have gotten with the storyline. Anyways, I still really did like this, and I probably will be reading a lot more of her books because I love this underlying theme that she had through the book, which was depending on your situation, whether that be gender, you're a football star, how much money you have, you can have a little bit more control over your situation. I'm going to give you some really great examples. You have Kennedy, and she's seen as aggressive because she stands up to a guy who's basically glaring at her friend after her friend's situation. You have Shay, who beats the crud out of 2 people and gets away with it because they don't want to lose their football star. So they haggle with the lawyers and figure out how to make it work so that Shay doesn't go to jail. And my favorite example is of whether or not you have money, because the stalker actually comes from a very rich family who is very aware of the fact that she has a mental condition and possibly could be harmful to people. But because she has this money, they're able to cover it up and protect her with that money. And so it was just very interesting. I really enjoyed it. I hope that her other books also have different themes to them, because that was probably my favorite part of the book. If you like this review, go ahead and like it. If you have any questions or comments, leave those down below. If you like happy-go-lucky books and you know a lot of them, go ahead and email me those, because I'd love to have some that I can pull up and read after some really heavy books. If you want my reviews every week, then subscribe. Thank you all for joining me, and I'll see you again soon.